Welcome to the Writing in Your Jammies podcast. I'm your host, Jeannie Hall, and I'm a creative inspiration coach who helps writers reignite their creative sparks. This podcast is here to help you knock down any barriers that stand between you and your dreams. You can do it. Join me. Hello, and welcome to the Writing in Your Jammies podcast. This is episode 39, Blame, or How Not to Blame Yourself for Being Human, or Stop Beating Yourself Up. So this particular blog and podcast is pretty unique for me because it has 3 distinct titles. And the reason for this is very simple. When many of us first embark on our spiritual journeys, we discover that we bear the responsibility for how our lives currently are. Now, if you just did a massive double take, please just hear me out. Since our beliefs come from a thought repeated over and over, and then our thoughts lead to how we feel, which produce action, which create our results, well, we create our own lives. And this is what the law of attraction and other similar teachings, Abraham and Byron Katie come to mind, tell us. So figuring out that we created something we don't want in our lives can be extremely upsetting. Many people even reject this concept outright at the beginning. They might say something like, "Why would I create pain for myself?" Or, "I would never make myself suffer like I have if I was the one in control." And I totally understand that reaction. I really do. It's way easier to blame someone or something like God or an ex or an alcoholic parent for the discomfort or hurt we may have gone through in our lives. But the thing is, we really do create our reality with the way we think and feel, or at least as adults we do. How do we do this? By allowing those feelings and thoughts to make us act or react in certain ways. For example, maybe we don't like our job, so we just do it kind of half-assed. We don't give it our all, so when a promotion or a raise comes up, we don't get one. Or maybe our significant other doesn't take the trash out as often as we'd like. We're not going to say anything about it, though. No, we just expect that person to know. And then we get resentful, which leads to us eventually exploding at them. And then we keep fighting with each other. And soon our happy relationship isn't so happy. Now, once you learn that you are the one causing the results in your life by how you think about your struggles, it can be amazingly empowering. You are the one in control of your thoughts. So guess what? If you don't like certain aspects of your life, you can change them. Yay for you! Yay for all of us. And since we can change the way we think and react to our circumstances, all of our problems become, ta-da, fixable. And the fixing may take some time, but just knowing that the power to fix those things resides within you feels so good. But there's also another side to that coin, and that is a pitfall. That realizing what my mentor Kelli Cooper calls a conscious creator. And that pitfall is to blame yourself and beat the tarnation out of yourself for all of your past mistakes. Now, I totally did this. When I first started out on my spiritual journey, I was going along being all positive, Miss Little Happy Sunshine, and glossing over anything negative because I thought that's what I had to do. I thought that's what the law of attraction was all about. So I ignored all my fear and all my doubt and all my anger and all my sadness, and I pretended like it wasn't there, and I swept it under the rug. And so then it came out in totally different ways. So yeah, I totally get that then you're going to beat yourself up if you're that kind of person, which I totally was. So, for example, I realized that I had created some things in my life that I actually hated. And my reaction to that was to totally tear myself a new one. How could I be so stupid, such a moron? Now I have to deal with this painful, unwanted situation all because I'm an idiot. God! Yeah, that reaction, not so helpful in the scheme of things. And after ripping myself a new one, until I felt like my soul was broken and bleeding on the floor, I started sobbing, and the regret started to sink in, and I began to think about how bad of a person I was, how stupid, how weak I was, that I could never do anything right, that I was a wreck, and that I'd caused my life to be a complete mess. And that went on for quite a while. Needless to say, my suffering continued. So if you are the type of person who tends to totally flagellate yourself when you make any kind of mistake, you perfectionists out there, I used to be one, so I can relate. Listen to this next part very carefully. It is not your fault. While it's true that we create our own realities, we don't know that originally. We don't know what that really means when we first come into this spiritual journey. And if you're like I was and you've only learned part of it, you learn bits and pieces of these spiritual teachings without getting the whole truth, basically, then you don't realize that the power is within you the whole time. You don't realize the power that each one of your decisions has. And you don't comprehend what the repercussions of undervaluing yourself is going to be. So when I was beating myself up, I was thinking about how horrible I was. And that only made the situation worse. It actually compounded my problem, because not only did I blame myself for the crappier parts of my life, I then totally beat myself up for it and made the situation 10 times worse. Because then not only did I feel like I was to blame, I also felt like I should have seen it. And so then I took that opportunity to just be horrible to myself. And all that brought me was this horrible, terrible feeling. And I felt so awful that like I said, I just sobbed and sobbed and sobbed. And I thought I was a failure and kind of threw myself an old-fashioned pity party. One thing I did was I would expect people to just know I was upset. If I was upset, I would just expect them to know, right? Even if I gave no outward sign, even if I didn't tell anybody, I just expected them to know and just somehow intuit the reason why without me explaining anything. And if they didn't, then I'd be mad, right? Why couldn't you just read my mind, right? A lot of us do this in our relationships. We'll be mad and we'll resent something like the trash, for example, not being taken out, or whatever chore it might be, or how could you not know that I was upset or feeling bad that day or whatever, even though I didn't say anything about it, right? How dare you not notice, right? And then blame the other person for not reading your mind as if they could. Another thing I did, I made a job decision, a really important one, based on the offer of a raise. But the thing was, I knew that job was going to be horrible. I knew everything that job entailed, or at least the vast majority of it, and I knew I wouldn't like it. I knew I'd hate that job. But I took it because of the raise. How many of us do that? Make a decision based not on our happiness in any way, but on some external thing like money, right? Another thing that I used to do was I always thought everyone was judging me and assuming the very worst about me. I used to be super self-conscious about everything. And it was because I thought everybody was looking at me and judging me and assuming the worst about me all the time. Why would I think that? As if people aren't involved with their own selves, right? A lot of people are most people are wrapped up in their own lives. They're not looking at you. They've got their own stuff to consider. So unless you've got carrots sticking out of your ears, they're probably not giving you much more than a passing glance. And yet I used to worry about that all the time. I used to overeat at every meal just about, especially at night. And I also ate very unhealthy junk food. And yet, because my job was very physical, like I was moving furniture all the time, I thought I should be skinnier and couldn't figure out why I wasn't. And another thing I used to believe that definitely affected how my life was going was I tended to believe that rich people as a group, and this was a horrible generalization to make, I believed that rich people received their wealth, at least a lot of them, through nefarious means that were not above board, and that money was the root of all evil. And I had been taught this throughout my life, but still, that was a belief I had to change. And because I believed that wealth was gotten by a lot of people through nefarious means and that money was the root of all evil, I couldn't understand why I never could get ahead financially. As if money was something that if you told it you hated it, that it would then come to you. That's one of the basic components of the law of attraction, right? What you send out love to is what you will attract. What you focus on expands, right? That's one of the basic components. But if you're focusing on it with a negative feeling, then if you bring it to you, it's going to be the negative side of it. So by thinking of money as evil, I was actually blocking it from coming into my life, especially in any kind of positive way. The only way I could attract any kind of increase in money at all was by taking a raise for a job I knew I would hate. And did I hate it? Oh yeah, totally, right? What was I thinking? But how many of us do that? How many of us make a decision based on a faulty premise like that? And then can't figure out why we can't get more money. I hate money, but I don't know why it won't come into my life. I don't know why I don't win the lottery when I get a ticket. I don't know why it just doesn't happen. I don't know why. Right? I can't figure it out. And those are just a few examples. But each of those thoughts that I was having about money being evil and about people should just know what I'm thinking and what everybody's judging me and assuming the worst about me, all those thoughts were poisonous. So it's really important to, when we have a negative reaction to something, to look at the way we're thinking about it, to stop in our tracks anytime we have a negative emotion about something that shouldn't be negative, like money, for example. or strangers. Why would you have a negative opinion about strangers? You don't know them. So anytime something like that comes up, that is when you really need to look at that thought and go, whoa, 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 what am I thinking? Why am I thinking that? Where did that come from? And then you can work on changing that thought so that the things that are going wrong in your life, the things that you're unhappy with in your life, can then be changed and altered into something better and even something magical and wonderful, but not until you stop that poisonous thought in its tracks. And while it's really important that we look at our thoughts and we take responsibility for whatever actions have come from those thoughts, right? Because I was assuming that people were thinking the worst of me, I wasn't always friendly. I would look at other people sometimes in fear or shyness, or avert my eyes and stare at the sidewalk or my feet instead of smiling at people. And I'm not saying you have to go through life with a big grin on your face all the time, but it sure does make life more pleasant. I've tried both ways. And the grin works a lot better for your own happiness. At least it has for me. So if you take responsibility for your actions, that helps, because it means you're not going to repeat your mistakes. You're going to be aware of your poisonous thoughts, and you're going to be able to alter them and change them into something better. But something you can't do is hate yourself, because that's not going to help. So if you look at the way you used to think and you see those poisonous thoughts, and instead of just trying to change them, you beat yourself up for even having them, as if you were perfect or something, right? In this human form. Your spiritual being is perfect. But you as a human being, oh no, of course not. We're not perfect. We're here to not be perfect. We're here to grow and to challenge ourselves and to become better, to unlearn some unhealthy things that we may have learned along the way so that we can improve our lives. Because unless you're sitting there listening to this right now and you have the perfect relationship and the perfect job and the perfect career and the perfect financial situation and the perfect home and the perfect car and the perfect hair and the perfect body and you're the perfect weight and you have perfect fitness and you are perfect at everything, which I sincerely doubt, by the way, because none of us are, then unless you're in that situation, then there's probably something that you need to look at in your thoughts that need to change. And taking responsibility for that is important. But if you beat yourself up instead, you're doing the reverse of what's actually going to help you. Because beating yourself up is just going to make you feel horrible. It's going to bring about all these negative emotions, anger and fear and doubt and self-loathing and self-pity. It doesn't help. Trust me, as someone who sobbed her way through an entire day and night, basically, over these feelings, it doesn't help. Not to say having an emotion to feel, allowing yourself to feel it and release it, that's fine. But just continually beating yourself up for failing at something, that is in no way helpful. Because failure is a part of learning. Failure is a part of success. And you have to understand that. And blame is an emotion that never helps anyone ever, whether you're blaming yourself or someone else. Beating yourself up only hurts you and makes you feel crappy. And this is just as important. It doesn't actually solve any of your problems. And that's what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to solve your problems and fix the situation, which you're not going to do if you're so busy trashing yourself that you're just making yourself want to hide in a hole. Every mistake you've ever made has led you to where you are right now. You are learning right now. You are growing right now. And that is a wonderful, if sometimes difficult, thing. So give yourself a freaking break, okay? Don't tear yourself a new one just because you made a mistake or failed at something. Because that's an opportunity to look at how you can grow and how you can change that and move into something better. And like I said before, none of us do everything perfectly in this life as human beings. And the reason for that is because that would be totally missing the point of this human existence we're having. The whole point of this life is to try new things and to stretch ourselves and to challenge our fears and our doubts and our misgivings, to really look at them, stare them down and say, I can handle this. I can do this. You don't scare me anymore. Because doing all that allows us to become our best selves and brings us much greater peace and happiness than we could have ever achieved otherwise. Because if you just stay in the unhappy circumstance with the poisonous thoughts, you're not going to get anywhere. That is why people look into self-help and self-growth and personal development and spirituality, is they want something better. They feel that it's missing from their lives. You didn't come to this podcast because everything in your life is perfect. Just like I didn't start listening to Tony Robbins and Brooke Castillo and Kelli Cooper and Ryan Bidoff and Betsy Paik and all those wonderful people because everything was perfect in my life. Lots of things were wonderful. I'm very fortunate. I'm very blessed. But I wanted to change some parts of my life because it wasn't enough. I wasn't happy like I wanted to be in certain aspects. And that's a good thing because that means I get to grow. And because I learned that about myself, I get to help all of you guys. And that's a huge blessing. Getting to make a difference in someone else's life in any kind of positive way, oh, there is nothing like it. It feels so, so good. And I hope you all get to experience that too for yourself. So if you are the one that has been beating yourself up for creating something unpleasant in your life or doing something wrong, please just stop. Give yourself a hug. Really, and forgive whatever it was, whether you did it or whether someone else did it to you. Just forgive it and move on. And if you need to be angry, then be angry. And if you need to be sad or cry, be sad and cry. But after you feel that and you express it, release it. Let it go back to the ethers where it came from. Because after that, it's not helping you anymore. Don't keep harboring it inside of yourself like some escaped fugitive. Because that's another thing Byron Katie mentions in her wisdom, is if you keep something inside, a whole bunch of spiritual teachers actually teach this. If you keep something inside of you that is a dream that is unfulfilled, that will turn into something that will destroy you too. Or it can. So let yourself be who you're trying to be, that better, greater, improved person that you're trying to be, because that's what's trying to come out of you right now. We don't want things to sit inside of us and fester because they cause unnecessary stress. They literally will make us physically sick sometimes. So let them go. Forgive yourself. Know that all of us have made and will continue to make mistakes. That's part of learning. It's part of the process. It's part of the journey. So let the blame go. See what you've created so far as the observer I talked about in my last podcast. Look at your life through the lens of a fascinated, curious perspective and don't judge it as good or bad. Just see it for what it is. And be gentle with yourself. Be compassionate with yourself. Be kind to yourself. Appreciate and love yourself. And release the blame. And some new information for you. Did you know that this podcast and all of my Facebook Live videos are now available on YouTube for free for your viewing pleasure? Check out my channel under my name, Jeannie Hall. And I'd love it if you dropped by and subscribed, left a comment, some likes. That would be lovely. So guys, have a absolutely fantastic day, week, month, and year. Bye-bye. Thanks so much for listening to the Writing in Your Jammies podcast. I appreciate every download and every person who has subscribed. I release new episodes every Wednesday and Saturday, so if you enjoy this content, please consider leaving a review. The more reviews fledgling shows like mine receive, the more visible it becomes on the various podcast stations. Each review helps, so if you enjoy what I've been sharing, please help others find this show by leaving a brief review. Thanks again for listening.